Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. DJ here. Welcome to yet another hands-on SAP Dev with me, QMacro. It's great to have you on the live stream already. Good morning, Leo. Good morning, Srikanth. How are you two this morning? It's great to see you. It's a beautiful day here in Manchester this morning. I did a short run to pick up the car in Ashton that I'd left there. Had a couple of drinks at Broughton's, and nice run through the Ashton Oldham Greenway, which I think used to be a train track, but it's now made into a path. It's very nice. Here we are. I've got my coffee in, of course, my SAP Coffee Corner Radio podcast mug. I've made it a little bit strong today. I'll maybe tell you about my coffee making shenanigans another time, but needless to say, I'm building up my equipment as we go. So today we're going to continue where we left off really last Friday. So last Friday I was in Utrecht for the CAP Node.js CodeJam there at Innovation and Equipped offices, which were lovely and awesome and very friendly, and it was a good CodeJam. I really enjoyed it. I had a little office and we did some workflow stuff, and we'll continue to do that today. I don't really have any extra news and so on. My brain's a little dead. In fact, that reminds me. Next week I'm in Mechelen, just outside of Brussels, doing another CodeJam with my friend and colleague Marius, and I don't think I'll be able to do a live stream on that Friday, and then I'm off on holiday for a couple. I'll be off for about a couple of weeks, so I'm probably going to sort of suspend this series for a couple, maybe 3 episodes, and then come back towards the end of June. So I'll put more in the Twitterverse and so on, and update the blog post. But basically, I'm going to take a couple of weeks at least off. I'm going to be off, not offline completely, but I think we'll suspend the hands-on SAP Dev with QMacro live streams for a couple of weeks at least. Helmut, good morning. Good morning. Great to see you. So this will be the last one for at least a couple of weeks. So let's make it a fun one. Now, where did we leave off? We left off last Friday in the workflow editor in SAP Web IDE. A colleague of mine says, you're supposed to say it SAP Web IDE without the definite article. So instead of saying in the SAP Web IDE, you just say in SAP Web IDE, which, to be honest, to me doesn't sound right. So I may say it with a the. I don't know. So anyway, we left off and we were just creating a service task, and that service task we're going to use to call an OData service, and that OData service we'd exposed. It's basically the ES5 service on the demo gateway system that everybody can have access to. I'm sure everybody here knows about ES5. It was ES4 some time ago, and when it was upgraded, they we got a new SID. And we're accessing the ES5 system through an SAP Cloud connector, running in a Docker container using Nabi Zamani's Docker file. I've got a modified version of that, which I can show you later if we remember. But in fact, let me just switch to, have another cup of coffee. Talking of coffee, what I've learnt, I've got a new coffee machine, an espresso machine, a hand pull espresso machine. And I've learnt, just like with hi-fi, for you audiophiles out there, that the most important part of any hi-fi setup is not the speakers, it's not the amplifier, it's not the turntable itself, it's the arm and the mic not the mic, sorry, the pickup, the needle basically, top quality there, and then everything else flows after that. And with coffee, of course, it's the coffee, but next, from an importance perspective, is the grind. I didn't know that, So anyway, a story for another time. So I've got a new grinder and I've got a nice tamper. Anyway, let me switch to the main scene here, and this is basically where we left off. In fact, let me bring up a new terminal here. Let's just make that full size for a second and remind ourselves. Can we see that yet? We all see that. And remind ourselves of what we've got. I destroyed the SAP CC image for whatever reason, I can't remember. So I've recreated it a couple of hours ago when I came back from my run. So it's all set up exactly the same as it was last Friday. So this is based upon, just for those of you who weren't around last week, Nabi Zamani, there we go. That's based upon this GitHub repo. I'll put that in the chat there, and it's essentially a Docker file. Okay, and the Docker file looks like this. So we went through this last week, and this Docker file downloads the SAP Cloud Connector component from tools.annotated.com, and it also downloads the SAP JVM, and then puts them all together in a CentOS-based Linux distribution, Docker container, and then starts it all up. So it's a nice self-contained, literally, Linux system running the SAP Cloud Connector. And now what we can do, in fact what I've done already, of course, if I say docker ps what we've got here is this one, highlighted in blue. And that is, again, just after rebuilding the image, I instantiated a container. I instantiated one second, sorry. I instantiated a container image of that SAP CC 2.12.01, and it's been running as well. So that is all up and running. This other one is something I was messing around with before, a similar sort of thing. So that means now, if I just minimize that, that means that I've got here connected to my test trial account. I've got this workflow trial account set up. I'm running in incognito mode, so I can log into that. I've got the Cloud Connector set up. And in fact, if I bring up a new browser window here and connect, what am I calling it here? I can't even remember what I called it now. Oh, is it that? Is it that? Maybe it's not that. No, it's not that. I can't remember what the password was. Oh well, doesn't really matter. It's all set up anyway. I'll remember it. I'm sure after I go offline, I'll remember what the password was. But basically, what we've got there, and you can see this in the recording of last Friday's live stream. What we've got in there is a setup which exposes the ES5 system via a virtual host name called virtual ES5, and I'm just sort of mapping port 443, which is of course the standard HTTPS port, to port 8000. A bit of obscurity there, and what we've done is we've mapped SAP the path and all subpaths from SAP OPU OData. So basically all the OData, or more or less all the OData services on that ES5 system are available through this Cloud Connector. And what we also did was set up a destination called Shop Service, and that destination points to this virtual system. virtual ES5, or this virtual URL rather, the virtual host name, SAP OPU OData SAP EPM Ref Apps Shop Serve. Now, in fact, why don't we have a quick look to see what that is? SAP ES5, SAP Dev Center, there we go. In fact, what I need to do is just cancel that for a second. SAP client equals 002, because the default client is, or the client that we need to log on as is 002. Now, I've got an account on there, I34751, and anybody else can get an account there too. What's going on with all my passwords? One failed. Let me just try a normal tab. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I'm already authenticated here. I've got all. See, I'm setting up all these different things, and I'm using new passwords, and I should use something like Bitwarden. Was it HTTP? Oh, was I not putting in the right thing there? Oh, I think it was HTTPS there. Fabian, good tip though. I should be using something like Bitwarden. That was it. Helmut, you were giving us a tip about Bitwarden last week, weren't you? Anyway, doesn't really matter. We've got this thing in here now, and this is a specific OData service, EPM Ref Apps Shop service, with suppliers and products and reviews and all sorts of different things, which is cool. And so we got that, and we can also access that through, if we have a look at our HTML5 applications, we've got this destination proxy, which we set up last week as well. So if we go there, of course, there's nothing actually in the app. The destination proxy is literally just a neoapp.json file, which assigns a mapping between the path /myshop and points that or routes that to the destination shop service, which is the destination we've got here. Where is it again? In our connectivity area, shop service. Okay, so if we do, and we can use this, let's get rid of that as well. We can use, where are we? This little destination proxy test to check whether the proxying, the reverse proxying, and the routing from the connectivity mechanism inside SAP Cloud Platform is working correctly. So we can say, for example, destination service /myshop. So if we go here and say HTML5 applications, destination proxy, start up the app here, we can actually see what's in there. We can see the neoapp.json because I'm not blocking that from a security perspective. But we can say was it my shop? And then metadata, for example, for the OData. There we go. So we can that now proves to us that the destination definition is correct. The connectivity service on SAP Cloud Platform is doing what it needs to do, which is to route through to a backend service, that's either on the internet, but in this case, as defined in the destination, it's actually in. Why don't I start? I'll put another tab here so we can have a look at the destination at the same time as well. But in this destination, here we've got where is it? We've got the definition that says this is an on-premise proxy type, so it goes down the tunnel that's been created specifically to the SAP Cloud Connector that's listening with this location ID, which is what we specified when we set the Cloud Connector up and running in the Docker container on my machine here. So we're all good, it's all working. So that's where we left off. And Bitwarden even has a CLI. Ooh, interesting. Okay, that's definitely worth looking into. We're all CLI fans here, aren't we? That's good. I'm just looking at my video preview. On my video preview here, the video is frozen. I don't know. I'm guessing it's not frozen for you. Okay. So Fabian, you're saying it always makes you scratch your head when you specify HTTP in a destination definition. That's an interesting point. Now, I've read somewhere that I don't know whether it's that HTTPS is not supported on an on-premise based proxy type, but because the tunnel that traffic, those HTTP requests and responses go down and come back up again, because that is encrypted, using HTTPS is not necessary, because the entire conversation is already encrypted by the tunnel itself. That for me is a reason for being comfortable in using HTTP in an on-premise based destination proxy. So that's my understanding, Fabian. If everybody else has got that understanding or a different understanding, let us know in the comments. But that is what I understand from there. I'm just looking at this destination definition here. I've just noticed that what we also did was add this additional property to the destination definition. It makes sense to me as well, Fabian. Exactly. Yeah, it does make sense, right? And that's why we see that. We've got the SAP Client 002, and what we're about to find out, I think, is something quite interesting about the workflow service task mechanism. But anyway, we'll come to that. We'll come to that now. Where are we? We've got the destination proxy. We don't need that anymore, but that was just literally a test to make sure that the destination definition was correct. So we can remove that. That is that proof. So here is we set up a Fury Launchpad site in the portal service, and this is it. As you may or may not know, what I mentioned last week is I'm building CodeJam content for a workflow based topic. It's going to cover workflow. It's going to cover the API hub a little bit. It's going to cover, because of the workflow API, it's going to cover this Docker based cloud connector and so on. Should be a bit of fun. I'm almost there with the general idea. So we will see. And this is part of building this up. So as part of that, one of the things we'll do is build this, build a Fury Launchpad site. Last time I played around with workflow, we only had these three tiles, right? The My Inbox and the Monitor Workflow app, and of course, there's two ways into that Monitor Workflow app. You can look at the definitions and you can look at the instances of those definitions. In the same way, it's almost like there's a parallel, isn't there? There's a workflow definition and instances thereof, and there are Docker containers and images thereof. And there was, I think it's a nice parallel there. I think this app, the Monitor Workflows app, is really nice because you can jump between the instances and the definitions and back and forth very nicely. Very nicely designed app from a UI perspective. Okay, so we got that. And in our SAP Web IDE, we've got this shop stuff workflow project that we set up last time. So I'm going to get rid of that and that. There we go. There's the shop stuff. Yeah. And that's where we left it. So what we're going to do is, first of all, have this service task and have this service task call or retrieve some information from the back-end system, right? From the ES5 system via the cloud connector, via this destination, via the connectivity service proxy. Hey, Nabheet, good afternoon. How are you doing? Great to see you on this lovely Friday here. Looking forward to the weekend immensely. God, this coffee is so strong, it's making me really thirsty. I just realised I can see in my video here that there's my bottle behind me. So that's better. That's better. Okay, so what we were about to do was to set up the service task so that it used this shop service destination. So there's our shop service destination. And let me put that together. In my mind, I always like to have the tabs in a sort of, to me, a logical order. I'm developing down here, and then I've got my configuration here. I've got my sort of end user UI thing, the result of my labors, on the right-hand side. So that's a more of a logical order for me. So we specified the destination shop service, and we were about to specify the path. Now, given that the path that we've specified in the URL already has this specific OData service, and this OData service, as you may know, is one of a set of OData services that was created specifically to support some sort of reference app. So this is EPM, Enterprise Procurement Model, reference apps, and the reference app that this one supports is this sort of shop app that provides information on products and reviews of those products and so on. And underscore SRV, let me know if you know why it's underscore SRV. I mean, obviously SRV stands for service. A lot of the Microsoft-based OData services end in .svc, and I think it's for a similar reason. But anyway, that's just a bit of trivia. In the same way that last week we talked about what OPU stood for, occasional platform user. But anyway, so I'm rambling now. So what we want to do is know that the URL in this destination already starts or ends at the OData service. So everything we put in the path is something that should follow that. So if we have a look here, we can see that the service document is showing us that there are multiple collections. There's main categories, subcategories, suppliers, products. Everybody likes products. Let's go for products. So if we specify products here, in fact, why don't we specify products here and see what happens. First of all, let's see what we might get from SAP ES5 if it responds, if it talks to me. Come on. There we go. And of course, this is XML. I prefer format equals JSON. What do you say, darling? Yes, we love XML. Michelle says we love XML. But I prefer JSON, actually. JavaScript object notation. Just in case Michelle thinks I'm preferring it because it's my middle name. Oh, I've given the game away now. You know what my DJ stands for. Oh, well. So here we go. Here's JSON. And that's quite nice. That's a lot more readable. But anyway, this is the product stuff. And so that's cool. In fact, why don't we just get one? Products, we give the ID, which is HT1000. Let's go for HT1000. HT1000. There's a discussion going on. There always seems to be a discussion going on about, OData versus REST APIs. I mean, to be honest, calling something a REST API is a little bit nonsense. The only true REST API is the web. REST APIs use certain representational state transfer features, not all of them by any means. But OData is a REST API in the same way that any other REST API is a REST API. It really annoys me that people, distinguish. But one of the beautiful things about OData is that it has a consistent implementation. A REST API could be any shape or size, to a greater or lesser extent. And you have to learn about how the API works. Because there are not many REST APIs that follow HOS, for example, hypertext as the end of application state. Sorry, this is a bit of a rant here. But one of the beautiful things about OData is that it's a formalized standard implementation of a REST API. It's an example of. So I know, for example, that I can put brackets and then the ID to get an individual entity by specifying its ID. What's not to like about that? Anyway, rant over. So we've got we're going to grab that one and we'll just get one. Okay, we'll just get this individual one here, and that's it. That's all we get. That's the whole of it. So actually, why don't we get that? So let's just specify that and stick that there. Now, the interesting thing about what I mentioned about this additional property, SAP Client 002, is that right now, for reasons I don't quite understand, the workflow service doesn't support this additional property. There are certain services in SAP Cloud Platform that do support this SAP client specific, SAP client additional property, but the workflow service doesn't. So that's just something we have to look out for. Douglas, thank you for subscribing for 2 months with Prime. Amazing. Thank you, Douglas. One thing we've got to look out for is that we'll need to specify the SAP client in our path, as in at the end, because it's a query parameter. So we'll do that now. SAP client equals 002. Okay. I'm not a big fan of the fact that it doesn't support this parameter, but there we go. That's the way it is right now. So you just got to remember that. We're retrieving this. We're doing a read rather than a query, because we talk about CRUD plus Q, right? Create, read, update, delete, and query from an OData perspective. So those are OData operations that map nicely onto HTTP methods as well. And of course, read and query map directly, both map onto the get method, right? And the difference between a query and a read is that a read is where you're going to get a single entity back in return. So this is a read, for example. In fact, let me switch back from we are going off piece a little bit. That's okay though. If we just switch back to XML, we should see the ancestry of OData, which of course is Atom. And this is an Atom entry. This is a blog post entry because the whole Atom format was a format for representing blogs and blog posts and manipulating those posts within a blog, within a feed. And so there's a feed which represented the whole blog because blog is an entire collection of posts. People get it right. Blog post and blog. There's a difference, huge difference. And then an entry is an individual blog post as part of a feed. So when you do a read, you get an individual entry back. And when you do a query, you get a feed back. So if we actually remove this for a second and do a query, we're still using the HTTP get method, but we get, as a result, hopefully, the outermost element should be feed and containing entries. Okay, you probably knew that anyway, but I think it's always worth remembering, right? Or being reminded. So anyway, we're going to do an individual OData read operation, which is get. And what the details of this service task is asking us to do is specify where we want that result. So why don't we say, and this is in the documentation, every workflow instance, as in an instantiation of a particular definition, a running instance, like an image of a Docker container image. You have this context, so you can refer to the context with this what's it called? JUEL, JavaScript something expression language. What does JUEL stand for? Does anybody know? Unified expression language? That would be my guess. I don't know. Kujitsu, thank you for following. I'm just wondering why are my alerts not showing? I don't know why. Did somebody see this? Kujitsu has followed. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I need to restart my stream labels thing here. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to put it somewhere. Why don't we say results? No. Why don't we say here product data? That'll do. Okay. So we'll see what that sort of what we end up with that. Okay. I've saved that now. I'm going to deploy this for the first time, and let's see what happens. Okay, deploy to SAP Cloud Platform, workflow, that was very quick, shop stuff deploy for details check console. And we can see here that, it's not much more than what we saw up there, but we see that every time we deploy it, Kujitsu is now following. Thank you, Kujitsu. Yes, maybe that was the stream labels restart. I'm not quite sure why it took so long to alert. But anyway, so now we've got that deployed to SAP Cloud Platform. Hopefully, when we go into monitor workflows, workflow definitions, we should see shop stuff as a definition, right? So this is version 1. We don't really see very much about the definition. We can download the workflow model, which is, I think, the same or similar to being able to download that or export it from here. But let's not do that right now. Hey, Kajitsu, nice little emoji. Awesome. Is that the right way to pronounce your name, Kajitsu? Let me know if it's not. What we can do is we can start a new instance, right? So, and they've got a really nice sort of way of starting a new instance, and as it says here, enter the JSON with which to start the new instance. So this data here, whatever you type in here, gets passed into the context of the instance to start off. Because you can imagine when you start a workflow instance, you probably want to send it some data to work with, right? And I really like the fact that, again, just like in CAP, we've got a bookshop sample, and that's part of the scaffolding that you can generate from CDS init. You've got books and authors. This is quite nice, sort of non-enterprisey, a little bit sort of erudite information here. Very nice. So let's keep that. Start new instance. So I'm going to click that. Workflow instance started, and then we can jump straight from, because we're in this app called BBM Workflow Monitor. We're looking at the definitions. If we hit show instances, we'll stay in the same app, but we'll go now to a different part of the app, which shows us instances. Filter by shop stuff. No instances found. Ooh, why? I wonder why that is. Let's have a look. Because I'm guessing, because the default status only shows us instances that are either running or suspended or in error. Okay, it's right, Kajitsu. Excellent. Not Kajitsu _ of course. So in fact, let's select them all to see if we can find anything. There we go. It's completed. So what does that mean? It means that if you look at the definition of this workflow, it's gone from start event. It does a service task. Hopefully that's finished successfully. Well, if it hadn't have finished successfully, the status of the workflow instance would be erroneous or in error. And then it goes to the end event. So where are we? There we go. If we look at the execution log, I started the workflow, the service task started, and it also completed successfully. Took 2,845 milliseconds. It used this service endpoint shop service, and this is the actual HTTP request that it made, which is quite nice to be able to see. And then it completed successfully. Now, if we look at the workflow context, we have the information that we supplied at the start, as in this sort of information about this paperback book of Hamlet, product, author information, price, and so on. But we also have, there's the other part, we also have this product data. And the product data is where we said in the service task, that's where I want the results of the OData read operation to be placed, context.product data. So that's why we've got it there, product data. And of course, as you may remember, when you request OData in a JSON representation, let's just go back. Is that the? There we go. No, let's go back here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that'll do. You'll see here that the standard OData representation in JSON starts with a D. I have no idea why it always starts with a D. I mean, I'm sure if you've messed around and called OData or retrieved and interacted with OData resources manually from a JSON representation point of view, you also see this D, and then you just get rid of it. You sort of reroute it. Route as in ROOT, not ROUTE. So anyway, we've got the D in the metadata and the average rating and the name and so on, and that's why we see that here as well, which is cool. So we've managed successfully, what's going on there? We've managed successfully to make a call to this backend service, which is cool, but not very exciting. So I think what we should do is add a user task to display some of this information. So why don't we do that? and what I said on Twitter was, it'd be nice to compare doing this with a form versus doing it with a UI5 component. Now I've got a UI5 component-based generic sort of UI app that I've used before. I'll bring that in, but let's do the form thing first. So if we say here user task, and let's stick it here, we can highlight that. You can probably see that green there as well. User task. Now that looks really ugly, but you can just sort of click that and say, right, sort it out for me. There we go. That's even nicer. So there's our user task. It's saying, okay, well, there's something that's not quite complete yet, which is fine. If we go onto the user task here and say, well, I want you to say here, hands on user task. That'll do. The details, we've got the subject. Now, the subject, we can also use this JUEL. It's bugging me. I don't know what SAP, no, site help.sap.com, workflow, JUEL. JUEL enabled expressions. Does it tell us what it stands for? JUEL expressions. Oh yes. Oh Java, not JavaScript. Java Unified Expression Language. Interesting. Okay. So it stands for Java Unified Expression Language. I'll just put that in the chat as well. There we go. And if you're interested in playing around with that as well, put that in the chat. Because of course, if you've got an ES5 user and password, then you can access that as well. Okay, cool. So we can also use Java Unified Expression Language expressions inside of the subject, for example. And as we've got, let's have a look what we've got here. Why don't we say the name, okay? Notebook Basic 15. So it's product data D name. So why don't I have that? What's this going to be? The context.productData.d name. Exclamation mark. That'll do. And because this is a trial account, I don't have access to any other users, so I've got to send it to myself, which, who am I? What's this user ID? This one here. So I'll stick that in the users here. Not interested in a due date, but now, here we go. This is interesting. We want to now specify a user interface. This is the thing basically that turns up in the My Inbox app. If we remind, let's get rid of it, we don't need that anymore. If we look at the My Inbox app, of course there's no tasks there right now, but once we select a task, the thing that appears here is essentially what the user task is designed to facilitate, to present a UI. And was it recently? When was it? It was maybe a year ago. How long was it that the workflow forms facility landed on the scene? I can't remember. I think it was last year. Really nice, really nice. So let's just choose that for now. Let's go and build a form. And what we want to do is maybe just display a little bit of the data that we've got in the context. Okay, why not? Again, reminding ourselves of what the data is. Let's go back and have a look at the instance. And of course that filter is there. Stock quantity, name, and description. Why not? Let's have a long one. That's easy to remember as well. Name, description, and stock quantity. So we've got no form right now. Notice in here that we've got this forms folder, which is empty, sample data, which is empty. If you want to specify different sample data for kicking off workflows where we saw the Hamlet paperback thing, you can specify sample data here instead. And when you do a script task, which is basically JavaScript, you create a file of JavaScript or multiple files and they go in there. I have no idea what web content is. We'll find out maybe. Yeah, so if we say now create a file for the form, let's call it product display. That'll do. Product display. Revision 1, because why not? In fact, because we started the hands-on SAP Dev with QMacro series at revision episode 0, let's call it revision 0 as well. Okay. So what have we got here? Why don't we? There we go. That's a bit bigger, isn't it? That's better. So this is a really nice editor to enable us to build a form really quickly. So remembering that we've got this, where is it called? Product data D, and then the thing here. So why don't we say add section, product info. What we want to do is maybe build a form that can display some stuff, but also take some input as well. And let's see if we can capture that somewhere. Product info, and we'll have a field there, name, and it's a string, and there we go. As we can see from the placeholder here, it's going to be context.product data.d.name, right? And let's add one more field, description. Just copy that one because it's going to be the same, isn't it? Description, and we'll have one more, which is the stock info, right? Stock quantity. That's an integer, and that's going to be stock quantity, if I remember correctly. Stock quantity, yes, it is. Okay, cool. Now all of these by default are editable, so let's just make those display only. That display only as well, and that display only as well. And why don't we have here a actually that'll do because we want to have some time to bring in the UI5 app as well, don't we? So that'll do. If we save that, let's have a decision as well. Let's just add a simple decision. Okay, and it's neutral. Or why don't we make it positive? There we go. Okay. Confirm. So that's the same. Let's save that. Okay, good. So now we've got the user interface there, product display, revision 0. That's all captured. Let's save that. Now we can have that form. Do we have to deploy that form separately? I think we do, don't we? Deploy. Yeah, we'll deploy that form separately. But we've also, of course, got to deploy the workflow definition, because that now has got an updated setting for the hands-on for the user task. So Fabian, you're asking, is SAP UI5 component refers to SAP UI5 apps hosted in web content? Possibly, yes, possibly. I've always used a separate, separately hosted or separate project in Web IDE, and that goes to a sort of independently hosted HTML5 app. But maybe that's where that comes. Yeah, maybe that's what that's for. That's new, relatively new to me anyway. Mockman999, can these labels be translated? That's a good question. I assume they can. Why is that still with a star? That's not saved. Let's save that again. I assume they can, but I don't know. That's a good question. I can't see any translation facilities here. I don't know. Let's try and find out over the course of the next week. So let's go into monitor workflows. Let's go back to workflow definitions and shop stuff. There we go, version 2. Let's start a new instance. We'll keep the same data. Workflow instance started. Now let's go into show instances. And that previous one is completed, of course, but this one, nicely, is sort of still in the running state, and that's because, there we go. So the service task is completed, and we can see that because we've got the data here from that product again. But now task, the notebook basic 15 ! Available. Really nice. That's the recipient. So I should see in my inbox a task. The expert view is just a different way of looking at the inbox items. Let's use that instead. Ooh, yeah, that's quite good. Notebook basic, click on that. And there we go. So we've got this nice form-based thing, name, notebook 15, description, stock quantity, and we've got this confirm action here. and it also said hands-on user. That's quite nice. That should be now finished. It's now completed. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Execution log, workflow completed successfully. Why don't we try, because we've got 15 minutes left, why don't we try to bring in this sort of generic app that I wrote before to see what it involves, and so, you know, not deliberately to... What's going on there? Ooh. What is that? Oh, it's chocolate, I think. Not deliberately to... Oh, no, it's not. Don't know what it is. Not deliberately to show how awesome forms are, how quick they are to use, but just sort of to give you an idea of you know, what's what. So what I've got somewhere... I know it's in my sort of normal user IDE, web IDE full stack system. Yes, there we go. Generic user task. In fact, I was looking at it the other day. Generic user task is this thing here. What I'll do is I'll bring it out of this web IDE and put it into this one. Let's just do an export. Generic user task. Perfect. And I'll now bring it into here. Workspace, import, come on, file or project. There we go. Generic user task and extract. So this, let's have a look what this is. This is a regular UI5 app, more or less. And it has some routing information in neoapp.json. It refers to the SAP UI5 toolkit, of course, and both from a resources perspective and a test resources perspective. So nothing new there in terms of UI5. But it also refers to a destination BPM workflow runtime, okay, which is what you need to go and ask the workflow service for information about the particular task instance that it's meant to display. Okay, you know, otherwise, where the heck is it going to get this information from in terms of getting at the context of the workflow instance for that particular user task? If we look at the destinations, that's not the right one. If I count, if we look at the destinations, where we did our create our shop service destination, you'll see BPM workflow runtime there. And I didn't add that. That was added when I enabled the workflow service. Okay, so this is a destination that's put in there for me. And with that BPM workflow runtime, with that we can do all sorts of things. You know, access definitions, instances, user tasks, and so on, and do things with them. So that's what we need for this UI. So let's just close everything here and have a look at the web app. So it's a bog standard component-based web app. The manifest is fairly small. It's just, you know, what you'd expect from a basic UI5 app. Nothing really that exciting there. We're using a resource model for translation of stuff. We're not using any other model because the model that we use to wrap and access the BPM workflow runtime is actually done in the component.js here. Now this might not be best practice anymore. I don't know. Maybe it still is. I don't know. But this app works really well for me, and I've used this a number of times. And I nicked a lot of this. I pinched a lot of this from other bits of documentation. All we've got is this single view, this main view. Let's look at that first and then work back to see what the component's doing. The main view is just an app control containing a single page, and it's not showing the header because of a page header. We don't want a page header effectively when we're looking at. Actually, let me just instantiate another instance of this definition. See, I can jump straight to the definition with this click here. It's really cool. Really nice app. I've always liked this. start new instance like that, and then go back to the running instance. In fact, go back to, sorry, the my inbox task. There we go. So if we had a show header, I'd get another header round about here, because the actual UI that's provided by this component-based app sort of goes here, right, in this sort of box, in the detail, basically, not including the bottom bar here. So we don't want two headers. We've then got an object header, which, because I quite like object headers. This is just my design. It's not anything particular that you need. So I've got a little person here with, referencing a title in the model, which we'll look at shortly. And then in the app model, I'm just pulling out a description called task description, and then the items themselves to be displayed. I'm just using a list with display list items, sort of, property value, property value, and that's it. So let's have a look at the component that builds up the information that then gets sort of surfaced through these bindings here. All we do is a normal sort of initialization of a component. We create the device model, and we create this app model, which is created via this JSON model here, an by default empty task description, which is what was referred to here. Okay, but more importantly, how does the app know what to display? What context from what instance of what workflow to display? Well, basically the My Inbox sort of framework within which this app component is instantiated and runs gives it, instantiates it and gives it, when it starts the component up, some data in the form of these component startup parameters. And it's not just sort of, a flat list of scalars like property value, property value, property value. It can actually give it objects. So one example of an object that it gives it is the task model, okay? And there's all sorts of data in that task model, as in a workflow task, that it can use, okay? And then what it does is it creates this JSON model by referring to the BPM workflow runtime destination through the neoapp.json. Here, BPM workflow runtime refers to the BPM workflow runtime destination, okay, which is basically the one of the main workflow service APIs. And it goes and gets the context for that particular task via the task ID, which it gets from the instance ID of the task data that it's given in the startup, okay? And then it goes through, and I've just said, well, okay, when you've got this information, okay, so using the attach request completed, so when the JSON model call is completed, we've got the data in the context model, and then we say, okay, well, the source of this event here is going to be the actual JSON model. So then we go into the model and get this thing called generic user list, which is a bit of a placeholder for me, control. So this allows me to specify in a JavaScript task to put something in the context so that then can control what gets displayed. And then it goes through and says, okay, well, what source? Where's the source coming from the data perspective? And it goes through the properties of that source and says, well, we'll have this property, this property, this property, and this property. So why don't we do that now in the last 5 minutes, and yeah, run it. This thing here makes sure that this stuff is done really when we're really running within the inbox, within my inbox itself. Okay. We'll leave that later on. And we've got the actions here, accept, complete, so we can actually use the inbox API to inject buttons along the bottom here. Okay, so this confirm button came from the decision definition that we specified when we created the form. So to do that when we're not using forms, but when we're using our custom UI5 components, we have to use the My Inbox API. Where are we? To add an action, okay, and that results in buttons being on there. And we've got these, we've got these things here that get triggered on the action. And I've nicked this from this book approval tutorial, which is tutorial from long ago, which uses the workflow API to modify that task in a beautifully RESTful way using the HTTP patch method. How nice is that? And of course, we also need, because it's an HTTP request with side effects, as in it's changed into something on a server, we need to first of all request and then use a cross-site request forgery token, which we do here. And that's it. So I guess one thing we want to do is specify this generic user task control. And then the source is going to be a property within control. I can't remember how I use this. Let's just have a quick look here. Maybe I've got something. I've got a simple work. Oh no, not work list. Workflow one. Oh, there's web content as well. I don't know. Is there a clean import, retrieve product data, normalize? No. Okay. Well, let's forget that. We don't need that anyway. We'll just have a go. Okay. So if I now specify in the shop stuff. Oh, I need to deploy this first, of course. Generic user task. I'll just deploy it now. Deploy to SAP Cloud Platform. What? So a new application. This should end up here. Oh, that was quick. Generate user task. Yep. Close. So that is now available in the Cloud Platform to anywhere in that Cloud Platform sub-account. So now I need to specify in the shop stuff workflow definition, I need to replace the reference to the form-based user interface and have it SAP UI5 component instead. Now this select will allow us to select from a particular project here. So this is the generate user task and it works out that it's in web app. That's cool. And that's all we need to do, I think. So let's save that. Let's use the save button there. Come on. Come on. Save. And now let's deploy that as well. Deploy the workflow definition. We've changed the specification of the user task. Now, this won't have any data in it yet, but let's just see if it's different, first of all. Let's go to My Inbox. Let's go and create a new workflow instance. Oh, sorry. What I meant to do was go to the definition. Let's create a new instance. And let's call it something else, so we can identify the data. Show instances. There we go. So that's this one here, the new one. If we now go back to My Inbox, we will see. There we go. So that's really interesting. This thing here, this previous workflow instance with this user task is using the form-based thing here, and that's all defined and sort of encapsulated in the task context, or the task metadata really. This one that we've just created is using the UI5 app. Now, of course, there's no data in there because I've not specified what data to display. Okay, but also I think if we have a look at the component, where is it? Yeah, there we go. The label on that button, in fact, let's just change that for now. Done. Let's just save that. And hopefully, let's just redeploy the generate user task. SAP Cloud Platform, yes. Version 1. Now, if I go back here, and I may need to refresh, but let's have a look. Yeah, let's just refresh this whole thing. Done. There we go. So there's the done label here. Now, we're just reaching the top of the hour. I'm just wondering whether we should spend Yes, why not? Why not? Let's spend next Wednesday's. Well, there isn't one next Wednesday, but I've got a chance to do one next Wednesday. We'll just finish off this next Wednesday, unless we've got some time now. Let's try and do it now. Let's try and do it now. I want to take a couple of minutes, hopefully. What we'll do is we'll add a script task to set the information that this app is looking for. Because if we go here, right? If we go to the inbox, let's debug this. If I refresh that, we should see the component loaded. There's my inbox components, but then we should also see the component specific to this particular task. There we go. It's that one there, generic user task. In fact, why don't we just do this? Generic, that's the one. There we go. That's what we see. That's this thing over here. So let's have a quick look. I've got this console. Let's break on this console log. Let's go here. See that one. Come on. And then go back here. Oh, of course, it's not going to load it again, is it? Yeah, let's just refresh that. Come on, come on, come on. Why is it not? Something's running very slowly. Why is that not? Is that the right place? Let's just empty the cache. Evict cache equals true. There we go. Okay, fine. Let's just move down to this one here. It's not hitting that breakpoint because it's not actually. Okay, maybe this will take a little bit longer. So let's do this on Wednesday next week, a special one Wednesday next week, because then we can explore it in a little bit more detail. I want to take our time and just maybe explore the workflow API a little bit more. How does that sound? Does that sound okay? Rather than rush now because we're over time, let me know, please let me know in the comments whether it's worth doing one next Wednesday as the final one before my break. Yeah, it would be nice to sort of to wrap up and explore maybe the workflow API a little bit more. I would like also to sort of mess about with it with Postman too, and maybe curl. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do that because we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining. Let me know on Twitter, on our Slack channel, or because obviously these comments are going to disappear shortly. If that's a good idea for next Wednesday, I'll do a final one next Wednesday because I can't leave this. Okay, Helmut, even though you're not there, brilliant. Okay, well the recording will be fine for you, I guess. Okay, thanks Fabian, and thanks Helmut for the comment as well. I wish you a wonderful rest of Friday and a great weekend, and I'll see some of you next Wednesday for the final one before my little break. Okay, take care. Bye for now.